Good space time, y'all. In this episode of the Citizen Cosmos podcast, I talk with Jae Kwon, the founder of Cosmos and the author of the Tendermint white paper. Along with Jae, we talk about censorship-resistant systems, the truth and instincts, misleading narratives, and division in the society. We also discuss humanity, the importance of discourse, fiction, semantics, the power of history, and languages and smart contract systems.
We have to create alternative financial systems because the system we're living under seems captured. It feels more like a wormhole between our physical world and a completely different kind of world. What makes a smart contract system good is going to be the language itself. It's really an ongoing battle of getting the truth out so that the things that were hidden become known and compellingly known in a way that is digestible to people so that they can say, oh, that's crazy, but that's actually real.
Before we rock it off into today's podcast, here is a roundup of the latest news from the sponsor of this episode, Cyber. The Cyber Congress DAO has been primarily working on improving the Bostrom hub. This work includes testing of the contracts, new UI features, verification tools for on-chain governance, and polishing the Bostrom DEX, adding MEF protection, new web front, and bringing indexing of chain swaps. To try Bostrom, head now to oversib.ai. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of the Citizen Cosmos podcast. And today I have the founder of Cosmos, Jae, with me on the show. Jae, hi, welcome.
Hello, nice to be here, Serge.
It's a pleasure to have you. I mean, it's a bit weird that our podcast with the name Citizen Cosmos only has you 3 years after the existence, but I guess that's a problem that we should have solved earlier.
That's entirely my fault.
Jae, could I ask you to introduce yourself in the way that you would like to be introduced for the audience, for the public? Anything you want to say about yourself?
Well, I'm first and foremost a programmer who wanted to create a platform to better, humanity. And I got interested in Bitcoin in 2013 and decided to commit my life to it in 2014 because of financial crises that happened twice in my life. So, through my parents, I've experienced it, both in the IMF incident in Asia and when I was living in Korea, but also during the 2008 housing crisis. And I realized we have to do something. We have to create alternative financial systems because the system we're living under seems captured. And then along the way, discovered a lot more about how the world works and why the state of the world is what it is, and decided to go even further and to create beyond financial platforms, to create censorship-proof social systems on the blockchain and so on.
This is something that straight away points me to a couple of questions I've prepared, though. I mean, I'm kind of the person who prefers to go with the flow, but I'm not going to lie. I have some prepared. And one of those questions is going to be completely probably out of the blue right now. But since you said financial crisis and you mentioned a couple of things, I mean, I probably should go into the intro. But before we even go into your intro in technology and how you became a programmer, I remember a few years ago something that made me, I mean, I don't have icons. I don't have people who I think I should pray to or religious, but there's something you did a couple of years ago, which I must say personally really impressed me. And that was your speech about the world is on fire, right? And I really connected with you then. Like a lot of the values that I live for and a lot of the values that I have been building, and I have been also in blockchain since 2011, that I've been doing, you have said there. And I want to ask you, what was it? What was it for you? Why did you decide to do that speech? I don't know if the listeners out there have heard it. If you haven't, there will be in the links to this podcast episode. But regardless, right now, why did you decide to say those words? What was it for you?
So that was in relation to the Virgo project. The code name was Virgo. And the point is, it goes beyond Cosmos. It's part of Cosmos, but it's also beyond it because it's not about financial systems per se. It's more about censorship-proof communication and social systems that we need. What happened was it seemed like Cosmos was going on a good path. Everyone knew what they had to do and everyone was on board with the Cosmos. So I figured, okay, this is a good time to consider what else should I focus on, right? Because I'm much better at starting something based on needs than necessarily than everything else that, I'm just best at starting something. So within the company AIB, I decided to create a new project or department called Virgo. The idea is to enable social applications. In particular, there was a project called Dither, which we abandoned for reasons, but we're coming back to now with Gnolang. And Dither was intended to be an alternative to Twitter. And but okay, I'll talk about why. I decided to kind of sit for like a whole month and just meditate on what's wrong with the world because there was a lot. And I didn't understand what was going on fully, but I could see where we were headed. It was pretty clear just browsing the news, and what the narrative was in public that we were being driven to division. We were being fed a lot of lies. Whoever it is, whatever it is, various forces were causing us to be divided. And meanwhile, we're not addressing the issues in a way that is constructive to humanity. So at the time, I was particularly concerned about the climate issue, right, and environmental issues. There were fires raging around us. Now I have a slightly different theory on what exactly happened there, but it was clear that we as a species don't have our shit together, and that we're at a precipice. We're at a fork in the road, so to speak. If we can figure out our junk, if we can figure out how to move forward together peacefully and constructively, then we would be able to expand beyond even our planet, right? Then we would be able to touch the cosmos, expand out there. But if we were to try to go in the path that we currently are, led by capitalism and led by all these forces that are more selfish and less concerned about the long term, then we would end up destroying ourselves, that we would end up wasting an opportunity to escape the solar system and go beyond, because our infrastructure is largely based on fossil fuels, and we've spent a lot of it, we've extracted a lot of that, and our infrastructure is crumbling now, right? And if we then enter into a war, which we have, and this war continues on, then we would destroy our infrastructure and we would not be able to get back to the point where we can explore space and so on. That was the big concern, and realized, oh, this is the fork in the road for humanity. We have to get our stuff together. And in order to do so, first we have to figure out the truth. We have to have constructive conversations among different diverse factions of society. And instead of just butting heads and being led by those who want to sow division, we have to create a system that enables constructive discourse despite our differences. That insight I learned just working on Cosmos, when I realized that even within our own ecosystem and even within the company, all in beds at the time, there were factions and people were not talking to each other. It's so easy to say, oh, like that group or that person is evil, and then to construct a narrative that's, half true or false, or to be misled by rumors, and then to stop communication. And it became clear that this was a big factor enabling division. But once we start communication and try, then, it's really easy to resolve things.
It's astonishing, in my opinion at least, how people underestimate the power of censorship because we are social creatures. We have to communicate. And when people censor, it's astonishing how people underestimate how many people it actually leads to be killed at the end. And there are so many examples, I think, in history. But not to go into my own views, before I ask you questions, to open up a little bit about what you just said, I guess I'm gonna do one boring question, which I apologize for, just because I did jump ahead, like with the whole like, hey, boom, let's go straight into it, just to understand you a little bit better. And I'm gonna make some assumptions here. Correct me if I'm wrong. Now, you mentioned that through your life, because you had some financial crises that you went through with your family, and as far as I understand, not only with the family, did that essentially lead you to the programming? Like the question is, sorry, is how did you get to blockchain, not to programming, but to blockchain? I know 2014, I remember that paper. I remember it very well. But still, what path led you there? Was it the financial crisis, or was it seeing the world being fucked up, or what led you there?
I was interested in programming and emergent systems, right? Decentralized systems. And I remember in university, when I was still going to Cornell, my professor was Emin Gunserer. and he started Avalanche. And one of the projects he had us do was to recreate a portion of Freenet and other decentralized systems. And that's when I really got interested in decentralized systems and programming. And for a while, I always wondered, what would it be like to create a metaverse? I was kind of interested in creating metaverses because as a concept, it's really fascinating, to have something that is real as an object, something that takes force to destroy. It's difficult to destroy. And that's how real it is. And it affects our world and intersects with our world. And yet it's not physical. So I had these interests, and then 2008 happened. And then I started looking for alternative financial systems. I went to conferences and looked at other projects that were related to finance, alternative finance. I looked into time banks, alternative local currencies, and studied a bit about them. But, it was pretty clear that they weren't catching on as much, right? I mean, of course, some local currencies have been around for a long time, like the VIR and so on. But there wasn't something that was really going to change things until I discovered Bitcoin. When I first saw Bitcoin, I was like, oh, this is cool. This might work. But it wasn't clear that it was going to work until 2014 during the bubble, right? Yet another bubble. And I realized, oh, this is a system that is going to work. It's going to change the world. So that's when I decided to commit to the crypto space. At first, All in Bits, the software company, the first thing I was working on, this was like way back when it was just me. I was working on a Bitcoin and crypto exchange called Fort Knox, FTNOX. And the source code is still up. It's kind of cool. It's a pretty simple exchange. And I think the cool thing about it was that it also had proof of assets. So there's actually a Merkle root to the assets of all the Bitcoin UTXOs in this exchange. And I think more exchanges should use, and publish things like that. And then I was learning regulations. I was learning about how money transfer laws work and how you need to post a bond in order to participate in this financial system. That's where the bonding idea came from for me. As I was learning the regulations around how to launch a crypto exchange, I started to learn concepts that eventually led to proof of stake. Anyways, one day, as I was just about to launch this exchange, I was just browsing on the internet and found some white papers from decades ago that described how to create Byzantine-Fault-Tolerant algorithms without proof of work. And everything kind of clicked. And I said, okay, forget this exchange. This is way more important because we need a world with many chains, not just one Bitcoin. So I decided to commit to Tendermint. And the rest is, I think, more familiar history.
It's a good thing you didn't decide to call the exchange FTX because the name is taken. That thing is taken. So don't go there.
Yeah. No. It wasn't FTX. It was FTNOX.
Yeah, it makes sense.
But similar.
Listen, I have a kind of a personal question for you that, well, it's personal, non-personal. It's not personal about you, personal for me. I mean, you mentioned the metaverse, and there is one thing I hate about that word. And the only thing I hate about the word metaverse is what the marketing companies try to sell that is. To me, the metaverse and the internet are more or less a synonym. There is some variations, but I would like to know your opinion. Could you agree that the words metaverse and the internet are more or less a synonym? Or would you say those are two separate entities?
I understand what you're saying. It makes a lot of sense to call the internet the metaverse, and there's aspects about it that it is, its own universe. I guess it's a little different when you have BFT systems that are securing this alternative digital universe, because it's more real in that sense, in the sense that it's not subject to the laws of our physical universe as much, even though it is, because all BFT systems are still vulnerable to a degree. But it feels more like a wormhole between our physical world and a completely different kind of world. So I see both sides. I guess a lot of people think of the metaverse as being 3D, like Meta. Facebook changed their name to Meta, and they tried to commit to the metaverse. But I see it in a different kind of way. I think that a more plausible and more real metaverse is one that's based on symbols. Like our digital world is all about symbols. If you imagine Ethereum or the smart contract system we're creating like Gnolang, that it starts to feel really more like its own universe full of symbols and logic and code. I think on top of that, as a platform, we can build 3D systems and interactive systems. But to me, the fundamental basis of a metaverse will always be language itself.
Semantics is a super powerful thing, right? It's crazy how our brain applies so much things to just a simple word, right? Which is just simple connection of lines, and then I mean, try calling somebody an asshole on the street, right? And it works straight away. It's not going to be passed. So you see how semantics works right in a second. It's amazing. Jae, I have a question to you. I was going to ask it later on, but I'm going to ask it now. I know that religion plays a big part in your life, and that's fair enough. In my opinion, in a world that you're speaking about, a decentralized world, a decentralized metaverse, there is no place for such sentences as let's destroy the banks or let's kill all the religious people or let's burn all the atheists, because it's not a decentralized world. A decentralized world is where people have choice. So I know that religion plays a big part in your life. I even know that you tweeted about like the Chosen, the Christian series. I did actually go and check it out what it was. I was curious. I have a weird question for you. If today you could change the world politics and religion, what would be the first things you would change in the world in terms of the political situation, which is also important to you, and the religious situation in the world today?
Oh, yeah. I mean, a big part of the motivation for Virgo, right, as a project was not just the environmental issues, but also seeing that, oh, there are these factions of religions, not just within the Abrahamic religions, Christianity, Judaism, and, Islam, but also others too. And it became clear that this may be, or this is a large force or a large obstacle to uniting humanity towards constructive action, right? So, in short, what I realized was we need to come to a conclusion or some progress in the narrative of religion to bring factions together so that we stop fighting each other. And I realized that all that is needed in order to accomplish that, okay, it's not all, but the major thing that we can do that we're not doing is just to help elucidate the truth of the matter. Because in reality, these religions are not, especially the Abrahamic religions, they're not working against each other. They're actually creating a joint narrative together with a plan to come to a resolution. And if enough people see what that plan is and how it's supposed to come to a resolution, then perhaps we can get over the stumbling block of factions of religion. That's really the motivation for me as to why I talk about religion, because I start to see what could be. And I start to understand how religion was being distorted systematically in order to create and sow divisions and to confuse people. Like most of what we think about and know about Christianity is not even, what I would call true Christianity. A lot of people would disagree with me, but I would say from my research, it seems like the institution of Christianity had maybe always been subverted, even since the year like around 100, AD or so. But problem is, it's hard to talk about any of this stuff without appearing like a kook, like a crazy person, and without attracting negative attention. It's so easy to just say, oh, he's just talking about religion, he's a conspiracy nut, he's insane, or whatever. So, it's pretty clear we all need a different approach to this, right? So maybe what I need to do is disassociate myself from, this idea of what could be. But in either case, I think it's going to happen. It has to happen.
I think the words conspiracy nut definitely were not in my head when I was asking that, because I mean today it's enough to, I mean, even if you talk about 2 years ago about COVID or anything, you would be, or you talk about aliens, you'd be a conspiracy nut, right? But come on, it's like, I think the label conspiracy nut is being labeled on anything by anybody who feels offended by something because of their semantics. And there's a question there in the chat about the religions and what is the Abrahamic religion called that unites all the religion. It's called Baha'ism. This is just for the listeners out there. I don't know if you, Jay, heard about that actually. It's a religion that recognizes all the 9 monotheistic religions.
I know a little bit about it. I don't know enough about it. I'd say I haven't seen from Baha'ism enough about the points that I have seen about Christianity and the conflict and the controversy there. I can't say that Baha'ism has the answers. I haven't looked at it enough. It's possible. I would say, though, that probably nothing that ends with ism has all the answers, right? Like no isms is kind of what I go for. There's various denominations of Christianity that have like portions of their truth, right? And some are more true than others. But like, as far as I can tell, nobody has all the truth. It's just difficult to arrive at.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think the truth is very much about the perspective, right? I mean, look at Socrates and what happened to him, right, for asking questions. So, Jay, if we were to play that game a little bit more, I mean, I know this is going to be a bit more controversial, but what if they could single-handedly change anything in Cosmos? And I'm talking about the Cosmos Hub today. You know, you wake up and I don't know why, but for some reason you have all the voting power personally, whatever. I don't know. Let's just theoretical situation, whatever. What's your first things that you do? What do you change?
Okay, I mean, if I had all the voting power, I'd make sure it's decentralized instead.
Makes sense.
Yeah, but I see what you're asking, of course. I think the biggest thing that I saw from Prop 82, right, the Atom 2.0 push, was that the narrative for the original plan of the Cosmos Hub was not well preserved. And what I mean is, it was always the plan to create interchain security and to solve scaling, and thereby to make the story of the Cosmos Hub the Atom story in terms of the business model, is to enable as many transactions as possible to solve the scaling problem. But politics happened, right? Various infighting and factions happened, and somewhere that message got lost, and people were led to believe that there is no story for Atom, but it's entirely not true. So that's one aspect. So if I were to change that, what would I have done differently? I would say probably it would have been better to start with the Constitution to make clear what the hub is about and what its business model is. And another thing I would do differently is have an explicit plan to make all the operations of the ICF, the Interchain Foundation, public, transparent, and accountable to the Cosmos Hub. So, just to be clear, for example, the Interchain Foundation, which I did most of the legwork to found, right? And so, the purpose of the Interchain Foundation was originally to make sure that the atoms are spent in order to create a well functioning, diverse, decentralized ecosystem for the Cosmos Hub. Regardless of the mandate of the ICF itself, if you read the fundraising terms, it's pretty clear that the reason why the ICF got the atoms is in order to develop software for the Cosmos Hub. There's some issues with what the ICF's doing. I feel like there's not enough transparency, and I feel like it can do better in terms of technical leadership. And what I mean there is specifically things like ensuring that the development of software around Cosmos, and specifically the Cosmos Hub, is aligned with the long-term vision that makes sense, that is coherent, and it's not just about pumping the atom price and so on. So the problem, though, is that we didn't have the right infrastructure for creating accountable DAO systems. The Cosmos Hub is pretty good, right? It's good for what it does in allowing different dApp chains to be built. So we've proven that, and many blockchains are using the Cosmos Hub to develop, but it still isn't quite as easy as what is theoretically possible. And what I mean is, it would be better, in my opinion, if we had on top of Tendermint a smart contract platform. And the reason why a smart contract system is better than programming in Go and the Cosmos SDK is because the logic can be in order or two magnitudes less. So there's a lot less boilerplate. You don't have to program it in a way that ensures determinism. And those are the main things. The fact that there's so much boilerplate when you try to create something outside of a smart contract system, and the fact that you have to program in such a way that you have to ensure determinism. And the fact that you have to read, decode, and manipulate an object, and then encode it, and then write it to disk. It creates all these layers and that are not necessary if you have a specific kind of virtual machine. Now, Ethereum, as far as I know, still the only other smart contract system that actually tried to solve this problem and did it well with Solidity. But I think we can go beyond Solidity and do even better. And that's what we're trying to do with Gno.land. The GNO virtual machine is very unique in the world. I suppose I haven't seen anything quite like it, and it enables really the theoretical optimum of succinct, type-checked smart contracts in a language that is well established, like Go. And I think it's going to change the landscape, and we'll see that the demand for applications is going to be more and more on top of a smart contract system, whether it's Gnolang, or some other language. It's going to be about languages and how well that language is integrated as a smart contract system.
We have a couple of other formats. One of them is like a debate format. We call it the Knights of the IBC Roundtable. And we had the Cosm Wasm one recently. It's lovely, right? It was Ethan, Sunny, me, and Dean from Agoric. And at one point, the discussion, even for me, even for Sunny, it went a little bit technical. At one point, Sunny and me were like, what the hell is Dean and Ethan talking about? We don't know. They're just like shooting at each other. But long story short, why not Cosm Wasm? Of course, we will get to no VM in a second, but why not Cosm Wasm?
It is a virtual machine. Wasm is a virtual machine, but it wasn't designed for blockchains. It was more designed for like the environment in the browser. So that's one. And that's why even if you were to support languages like Go on Wasm, which there is an experimental version of a Go compiler for Wasm, but it's not well maintained. So let me start over. What makes a smart contract system good is going to be the language itself. First and foremost, you have to choose the right language, and you have to provide integration between the language and what you want to do with blockchains. Okay. And Wasm doesn't let you do that. Whereas if you look at the GNO VM, it has features that are not really available in other virtual machines, even Wasm. For example, after every transaction, everything in memory in the GNO virtual machine gets automatically persisted. And it's also automatically Merkleized. So anything you create, any object that you instantiate, any structure, primitive value, even a closure that you create in the GNO VM, at the end of the transaction, you can prove the state of your application by through the Merkle root, the Merkle tree, and nothing provides anything like that. So why not Cosm Wasm? Because you can't do the same thing. You have to program practically you have to program your thing in Rust at the moment, and it doesn't provide the language features and the integration between language and smart contract platform that's possible. And so you'll find that for any application, it's going to be much more succinct to express it in GNO than in anything else. That said, I'm not saying there's no place for Cosm Wasm. I do envision a world where, it's not just the GNO VM, it's not just one language, but we need multiple systems and different languages and different, even non-VM systems that interact with each other. So there is a place and a need to bring smart contract platforms together to make them interoperate.
By the way, a strange question, not in terms of verifiability here and the semantics that GNO can offer, but in terms of the name GNO. I was always curious, considering the location of the first office of Tendermint in Berlin, together with Gnosis, and the name Gnoland. Is this me going crazy, or there is something that is, I don't know why, but Gnosis always like somewhere appears when we're talking about Tendermint, like with Gnoland. GNO, of course, it's not, but like, is it? Where is the naming coming from? Sorry. Simple question. Where does the name come from?
It's a modification play on the language from which it's inspired from, Go, right? And it's like the opposite, no. It's do you go or no? But also, maybe more so, even more so than that, the reason why GNO stuck is because what we're trying to do is create a system that enables everyone to know the truth, to understand more about reality, to debate the facts, and permissionlessly create application systems, different algorithms that enable the truth to emerge from conversations. Because there's so much fake news out there, so much misunderstanding and half truths and intentional misdirections. We need to create a way and find a way to sift through that. And the best way is probably going to involve combination of various things, including reputation systems, right, and then scoring. But we don't know how best to do this yet. And GNO as a platform will enable that experimentation so that we can know how to move forward together.
That's a very big challenge, in my opinion. Like challenge in terms that you put for the team and for yourself. And well, I mean, if you can solve that, I guess we're gonna have like some Lego blocks leading us to a vision of a world where people, actually can make it together, get their shit and make it together, and not fight over who said what, when, and at which point. But a little bit like a question that I had relating to that was, we're talking about big things. Well, specifically now, you're saying, in my opinion, things maybe for some people. I'm really apologizing to anyone who's listening to this. I'm not underestimating the listening capabilities, but sometimes when people talk about the truth and trying to find, things like that, it's underestimated, in my opinion, the value that those things have. I'm going to ask again a strange question. So, when I look today in the crypto world, again, let's bear in mind, like in mathematics, let's remember that we're talking about the truth and solving that and building for a world where we can get our shit together. Now, when I look at the world today, and I look, sorry, into the crypto world, that I'm involved in, that I'm part of, I see a lot of things like multi-sig wallet, enforcement of rules. Like people say, hey, let's make all the validators, well, I was going to say a rude thing, but, do this, let's make them do this. Nobody wants to look for a solution that the open market will make people do, that will create a situation. People create multi-sigs, like, and they say, oh, a multi-sig is way more efficient, and you don't need on-chain governance because there's too many people, or you need it, but they need multi-sig. And it's like, but isn't that reverting backwards? Isn't that reverting backwards from the truth? I mean, didn't we get to this point? Didn't we come to blockchain and get all these tools out there in order to stop doing things behind closed walls, in order to stop multi-sigs, to stop writing rules that are cemented in the universe? Isn't the goal is to evolve, to go explore space, like you say? And to me, it seems that those things that we are doing sometimes in crypto kind of take away from that rather than actually get us towards it, closer to that.
A big problem is that our tooling is not there and hasn't been so far. And so Gnolang wants to change that and show an example of how things could be. Here's an example. Like if you've been listening to the Twitter files, that scandal, there are various things that were exposed with the Twitter files. But even before then, there were, and all throughout, just for years, it was very clear that Reddit and Facebook and most of these social services were censoring in very sophisticated various ways. The big thing that comes to mind when I think of Reddit is it's not just like subreddits randomly being closed for like reasons that don't seem to make sense, but just seem to align with censorship, but also the fact that it seemed like Ghislaine Maxwell, was also perhaps a moderator of the World News subreddit, which is the most popular subreddit. Did you know that?
I was not aware of that. That is crazy, bro. Are you serious?
Oh yeah.
Are you
Oh yeah,
serious?
I'm serious. And if you look,
Fuck.
and yeah, the account was called G Maxwell.
Fuck.
And if you look at the things, and she went to like Reddit parties, she was well connected with the Reddit crew. And if you look at the kind of news stories that were being censored by this account, it makes sense. It all aligns. Okay.
That's crazy. That is really fucking crazy.
We're being attacked from the very basis of our ability to communicate and share information with each other. And yet we don't have a killer blockchain application that solves this. I mean, Steemit was pretty good, right? Steemit was an approach to provide a blogging platform, but we don't have alternatives that are serious. When are we going to have social media really on chain? And, the answer is it's hard to program. It's hard to make those things right just as is. Now imagine trying to put that on the blockchain. That's even more difficult. And imagine trying to create like a subreddit system on Ethereum, how difficult that would be, right? But if you go to Gnoland, you'll see source code, pretty simple smart contract, just a few files, very bare bones, that demonstrates a Reddit-like communication system. And you can see the code for yourself. It's very simple. And by having better tools that enable succinct expression of social communication protocols, we can create more experimentation and start to solve these problems that are all necessary in order to get to the point where we have DAO governance systems that actually work. Because if we can't even have a communication system, we're not going to have useful DAO system either, right? You need communication at the very least. among so many other features.
It's really interesting that you mentioned Steemit because, well, I was a lot heavily involved with BitShares. And in fact, along with some other people, we launched the first official fork of Steemit, Golos. Steemit was back then, their Genesis block wasn't public. We were the only project that actually paid them for it, and then they made it public. Well, they changed the license, so to speak, right? And it was like a Russian-based social network back in 2016. Well, not Russian, but Russian-speaking primarily. And yeah, the project is actually still alive. It doesn't have a team today or anything like that. But yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned it. So I have a lot of history with that. And I was top writer on Steemit for about 3, I think, months or something like that. It's crazy, crazy, crazy history.
I'm curious. I wanted to ask you a question, if you don't mind.
Go on.
All right. Are you still active there? You were a top contributor. Are you still active? And if not, why not?
You can still see my account, of course, because it's blockchain. Of course, you can go and you can scroll down. Why not? I guess when we launched, well, this is changing the clocks, okay? I was very much into Steemit, but then when we launched Golos, and after some time, after I quit, like first my attention focused to Golos, and I stopped writing completely. And the biggest obstacle that I saw there and that I still see today in that is on-chain proof of stake reward. The economics are just not there. The tools to build, people don't understand free on-chain rewards. I don't think they should be free. I think people should understand why they get in that reward. And those economies were milked very easily. Like you could have a 2 or 3, not even smart people. And I apologize to say that, but I really do mean it. Not somebody like a genius, not somebody who's, like, what's that movie called? Big Short, right? You don't need somebody like that. You just needed somebody with a loud enough voice. And a great example, back in Golos, back then, before you implemented the proof of stake, which had slashing, back there, the witness nodes, they didn't have that. And, one of the things you had to update price feeds. And on purpose, me and the other guy who was the founder of the project stopped updating our price feeds just to see what's happens. And people didn't care. People would still delegate to us all the time. And that was for us like the quickest proof that this shit doesn't work. People were milking the economy. All you had to do was just be a little bit more loud. The tools, like you say, the tools were not there. Today, the situation is changing. And I would love to see a place like, I was following Dither, for a while, a few years ago when I forgot the name of the...
Punk.
Yes, Punk, sorry. When we spoke with him a couple of years ago and he was telling me about that, and it was very cool. But again, when the tools are there, it seems that people are not... For example, there is this other crazy project, Cosmos-based project, and they had a version of Twitter where you had to use your ledger to tweet anything out at one point, and people were like, I ain't gonna do that, I'm not gonna like...
Yeah. We need better tools, and we can. We're actually working on solving that. So you'll see a solution to that problem. But you're absolutely right. The UX has to be there. You shouldn't have to use a hardware signer just to be able to post a comment.
It's crazy, crazy. Jae, you mentioned your vision a couple of times, and I know it's coming up to an hour already, which is crazy, but you mentioned the vision, the truth, the reality. Those 3 things are super biased, super subjective. How does one person, doesn't matter if it's you, but in your opinion, how is one person, sorry, able to deliver what's supposed to bring truth to people objectively without subjectively sticking his own opinions and subjectively putting his fingers everywhere in there? How can that be objective ever? Or shouldn't it be at all?
I don't think one person can do it. I don't think one person can fully know. Everybody has biases and imperfect information. So whatever the system is, it's not going to be something that gets everyone to follow this one person because one person has like a better idea and grasp of reality. But rather, I don't know the full answer. But of course, if you combine the perspectives of multiple people here's an answer, a partial answer. Back in the days before Google, we didn't know what websites were reputable. It was hard to know because people were gaming the systems and they were trying to create, SEO kind of in order to get promotion on search engines and all that. But there was an algorithm based on, what is it? It's PageRank, and it's based on matrix, algorithms that was able to distill eigenvectors or mathematical views of what might be most real or most truthful. And we need those kinds of algorithms to help us select among, I would say, not just perspectives, but also people, using a reputation of correctness of people who are able to distill truth, get to the point where we can distill truth from a variety, from the whole collective to see something more true than what any individual can understand.
If you were to try and, I know it's hard to summarize something which is dear to you because, well, I don't know about you, it is for me definitely. When somebody says, I mean, I love music, or what's your favorite song? I don't have one favorite song. What's your favorite writer? I don't have one. I love a lot of books. But if you were to try to summarize that vision that you're talking about into that reality that you're keeping, you're talking about the truth. We need that. And I understand what you mean by that. But if that vision was summarized in a paragraph or two paragraphs, what would it be? And one small sort of comment in there. Could you say it in a way where that anybody that is listening to that would be able to understand this right now, even if they didn't have any financial or technological background?
There's something maybe a little more concrete than what we've been talking about. We've been talking about truth in the abstract, but really, I think the question is more about there are certainly groups of people and organizations and ideologies that are working to confuse and divide everyone. Who is it? What is it? How do they work? What have they been doing? And what is the thing they are trying to bury? And if we can get better insight into that, I believe the entire charade that's put forth before us will dissolve, and we'll see what is today very upside down right itself quickly. So it's not just this abstract notion of finding something true. It's really an ongoing battle of getting the truth out so that the things that were hidden become known, and compellingly known in a way that is digestible to people so that they can say, oh, that's crazy, but that's actually real. That's actually what's happening.
It's astonishing how quickly people forget when those things happen, and when things like charades, start to be more of a circus-like show. It's amazing how quickly people forget who is the master of the circus, so to speak. So it's crazy. It is really crazy, and sometimes people forget that to invent something and to put something together are very different things, and take very different mind skills and mindsets to do. And there aren't that many people, in my opinion, in the world that can invent something that is used by other people, regardless of whether it's used in the way they were thinking about it. And yeah, splitting atom and Einstein, not a great example here, of course, but still, more realistically, there are technologies that have been invented and used by a lot of people, and people kind of forgot, doesn't matter who invented it. I mean, this guy, he's out there, he's doing the charades, and we should listen to him. It's crazy. Jae, considering your huge, in my opinion, experience in building products, could you give like a couple of words of advice to anyone today building on Cosmos or looking to build on Gno.land, for example, trying to look in the Gno.land VM code? What would you say to them? What would you advise to them to do or not to do?
I'd say one is to step out if you can, if you're in a position to step a little bit outside of the box of DeFi. Because while there's money in DeFi and it's exciting and it will potentially be rewarding, very rewarding, it's not necessarily the thing that we need. We can get by very far with very simple DeFi tools that we already know how to build. What we really need are solutions to the problem that go beyond the surface level of finance, but help tackle the problem that at the source. It's impossible to do that if you don't understand history, because once you get to the point where you are making a difference, you will encounter people who will manipulate and steer course for you, because this is how the world works. This is actually how the world works. You will find and meet people, even inside of your organization, in the very least, that just have a different idea of what they want because they want something different. Perhaps they want money and fame. So it's really important to understand history and to make sure that you align in vision with the people that you work with from the very beginning. And it's really important to try to be very methodical and slow in how you give up control. As much as it is important to give up control ultimately, how you get there, the devil is all in the details. And if you're not careful, then you will end up losing control to people and forces that you don't agree with. And so listen to your gut. Err more on the side of breaking a relationship off than trying to save something just because it's the convenient thing to do at the time, because you'll pay later.
It reminds me of, I think I've said it before already on the podcast, but Isaac Asimov, right? The biggest weapon in history, invention is history, because whoever controls history controls everything else, including, well, everything technically. So definitely. Jay, I want to keep on asking you questions forever, and I haven't asked you nothing about Atom 2.0 and anything, but I don't know how much power or force you have in you, or would you rather carry on talking, or would you rather do a second go sometimes else and finish this round here, or would you carry on, or would you want to carry on talking?
Okay, let's have another one. I think we're going to have a lot more to talk about soon with ICS and Gnolang, and I think we can go into a technical dive for the next one, and I'd love to do that.
So then, if it's okay with you, I'm going to ask you like the blitz question. It's 3 questions. You can answer them quickly. You can answer them slow. They're going to surprise you. Wait. They will surprise you. Everybody says they're surprising. The first one is shit. The other 2 are better, I promise. So the first one, it's going to go down 3 to 1. So the first one is shit question. Give me 3 projects, not Cosmos, not Bitcoin, not Ethereum, not Gnolang. You cannot say that technologically impressed you in the past 2 years?
One thing that I really like to do in solving problems is like to get to the root of it and just try to transcend the problem. Amino was like an attempt to do that, to transcend and get beyond protobuf and to beyond the need for even encoding systems. And I see that kind of spirit from a project called Telescope. And they're also working on a wallet. The Telescope project is pretty impressive. I like that a lot. What else? 2 more.
It doesn't have to be 3, really. It could be 1.
Really? Okay. All right.
But no, go on. If you want to say 1 more, go on.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't think of anything at the moment.
Okay. Cool. Don't push it out of yourself. That's true. That is something that if it impressed you, would have stuck, in my opinion. Okay, second question, and now it's 2 things. You are obviously, in my opinion at least, and I'm sorry, this is not an offensive thing. This is a very compliment. You're a sensitive person. You're a person with a lot of knowledge, a person with a lot of anyways, long story short, and this is the question that I think you would have a good answer to. Can you share with me and the listeners 2 things that motivate you in your daily life to keep on searching for the truth?
That's a really good question. What keeps me going? I won't lie. There is an aspect of what I experienced discovering the message underneath, like the New Testament, and especially the last book in the book of Revelation, that was really fascinating. So many things come together in those messages and in the book that it makes me wonder, like how it could be, like to the point where it does almost seem supernatural, like it cannot be explained. And the divisions and the prophecies are disturbing and difficult to comprehend and difficult to accept. And yet, in many respects, we see it unfolding before our eyes, according to the millennialist interpretation. And I think it's really fascinating, especially in the context of global organizations that I've mentioned in the past on Twitter, understanding the power dynamics of the world, even including more secretive organizations, like understanding why the world is and how it works and why these things are happening. Curiosity is a big motivator, but also, the desire to transcend the gridlock, right? The problems of today, and the hope that we can actually get to a better state where we can feel more at ease knowing that, certain things have been resolved. The hope for that kind of world and what kind of world we could be living in like 50 years from now, in our dying beds, sure, right? But like for our children, the desire to make a better world for them that's not as crazy as the one we have right now is probably the biggest motivating factor.
Hat off for saying curiosity, by the way, because you're not going to believe it. the amount of people and very smart people who have been on this show, no one has ever mentioned curiosity. I was always surprised why, because to me, it's also my driving force. It's curiosity. I mean, like, why not? Why yes? Why?
Yeah. Why is this
Yeah,
beautiful? Like, how does it
yeah,
work?
yeah. What is beautiful,
Yeah.
right? What is beautiful?
What is
Why does
beautiful?
BEAUTIFUL make beautiful? Like, why does it make images in my head? Like, it's pooh. Okay, last question, Jay. I promise. Wait, go on. You were gonna say, you were gonna comment. Sorry.
I was just going to ask one more, which is what is our role in the universe? What is our role? What can we do? Why are we here?
The $1 million question: to explore, to be curious. I think that is the actual answer, in my opinion. To build, to make sure that we can expand. Anyways, last question, I promise. Dead or alive, doesn't matter. One person that inspires you. It could be a coder, an author. It could be a politician. I'm going to say that, but I hope it's not a politician. Like anyone in the world. It could be a cartoon character. So dead or alive, real or
A
unreal.
single person.
Somebody who inspires you. It's not the only person, but inspires you. It doesn't have to be a person. It could be a ghost.
Let's say in tech, between like Tim Berners-Lee and all the way to Steve Jobs, they're just these giants that affects our lives every single second today. And if it weren't for them, it would be a completely different world. A lot of the heroes, though, seem to have fallen in some sense. So, in some sense, we're always disappointed by them. But Steve Jobs, though, feels like there's something missing with the world because since he was gone. So this is the last thing I'm going to say. Huh? Well,
It is.
yeah. Let's leave it at there.
Okay, cool. Jay, thank you very much. First, I'm just going to thank everybody who's been listening, and thank you for listening to this podcast, Citizen Cosmos, and join us next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
This content was created by the Citizen Cosmos Validator. If you enjoyed it, please support us by delegating to Citizen Cosmos and help us to create more educational content.